We're going to talk about delivery, everyone's favorite part of the class. The first thing I think is important to do is to talk about anxiety. And it is something that we are all going to experience when we're giving a speech. Even if you are genuinely comfortable, you are experiencing it to some degree. It's just that some of us have learned how to manage it to a certain extent. So we are all going to get nervous, and whether that's we are concerned about being in front of people, we're not sure what to say, we're not sure how to say it. Really, what you can do is to try to use that energy to your advantage. If you are concerned about what you're going to say, use that nervous energy into projecting your voice louder. Simply sound more confident in what you're saying. Even if you're not sure what it is that you're going to be saying next, as long as you sound it, we don't know the difference. We don't know what your speech is about. We don't know what your speech is going to say. All we are doing is listening to you. And as long as you sound like you know what you're doing, you're going to look like you know what you're doing. So, what kind of things can you do a little more specifically? Well, first and foremost, you can always just be prepared. Know the content of the speech. Have it worked on, have it planned out, have it sketched out, have it outlined. Think about it. Try running through it out loud. And have, a positive attitude. I'm not one of those people that are just, as long as you think good things are happening, that's all going to happen. But realistically, when you're giving a speech, if you set yourself up for failure and think about all the ways that it's going to go poorly, that's really what you're going to make happen. So if you think about the ways in which you can be successful and use the tools that I provide, like the outline template, you are going to be successful in the class. And also visualize and thinking about anticipating what you're going to be doing. Think about when you're standing in front of a group of people. What will you be doing? Be less concerned about what they may be doing and more about what you will do. What might your hands do? Where will you stand? What will you wear? So even think about that outfit if you have that nervous energy. And so put it to the planning rather than the worrying of what you're going to do. And so you can anticipate if there is a point at which you think someone might not like something that you're saying, and if that might make you nervous, know that that's going to occur and what could you do then in response to it. So anticipate what's going to occur in the speech. And really just focus on the content. It would be lovely if I could train you to be these beautiful, eloquent presenters, but just with the reality of the class, that we focus on the content and the structure of the speech. But there are some tangible things that I'll be able to give you with some experience of going through different types of speeches and what kind of things you'll be focusing on, that I think at the end of the term you will feel like your delivery is probably improved. Practically, what can you do to feel more comfortable? Dress comfortably. Literally be comfortable. If it makes you your skin crawl to wear a suit or some sort of professional clothing when you give your speeches, don't do it. If you need to put on a certain persona when you give your presentation, and if a suit does that, you wear that suit. I have had both sides of the spectrum where a student has come to give a speech, and they are dressed out, decked out, top to bottom, because they feel like that's what they're supposed to do when they give their presentation. And others have felt I am most comfortable wearing my fuzzy bunny slippers, and that's what I'm going to do, and that's what I'll give my speeches in. Go as early as you can. So if you're going to worry about it, if you have an opportunity to do your speech sooner, go ahead and do it sooner. Do it as early as you possibly can instead of worrying about it for a long time. Before you start, take a deep breath. I've watched enough times where someone has turned on the camera and they walk up to the front of the room, and then as soon as they turn, they just start talking. Get up there, pause, take a breath, get centered, and then begin. And remember that other people in the room are just like you. They get nervous when they give a speech, and they may seem like they're better at it, more comfortable at it, but everyone has that. So what kind of things will we focus on? Well, let's talk about vocal delivery. One of the things that I really push for and encourage is having a conversational quality, and so that means not reading. So, for instance, I know the outline of these PowerPoint slides in which I'm delivering this content to you, and I've delivered it in a number of different ways. And really, my goal is to talk to you about this content rather than lecture at you. I'd rather talk about it. And that's what I want you to be able to do in your speeches. You are talking with your audience, not talking at them. And to be attentive. If someone is leaning forward and looks like they're straining, get louder. If it looks like you're shouting at them, bring the volume down a little bit. I know that's kind of silly to think, but when you are dealing with a variety of people who may have different hearing abilities, you have to make sure that you're meeting people where they are. At the same time, if you are looking like what you are doing isn't very interesting, don't take that as a personal affront. So there are lots of reasons someone may be tired, but maybe varying up your delivery a little bit sometimes can liven up the content of what you're saying, make people a little more attentive to it. Immediacy is that feeling where you could reach out and give someone a hug. You want to be able to embrace your audience, and your delivery should do that. So if you're talking about something that's very serious for you, you can slow it down a little bit. Take a pause and get a little softer. It makes people want to tune in, makes you want to pay attention. You can feel the whole room has their collective breath held as you're holding them. And that's what you want to be able to do. And just be direct. Be clear. Don't beat around the bush. Don't try to make things more dramatic than they are. If something was scary, describe it as scary, and you can express that in your delivery. Some of the things that really catch people off guard is some just basic delivery mistakes that they make, and I want to talk about them and some ways in which to try to avoid them. And these are articulatory mistakes, which is fun to say in and of itself. But one of the things that happens that can really make us question the credibility of a speaker and maybe even just make us feel flustered when we're up there is when we make these little mistakes. And one of the easiest ones that we do is an omission, in which we will simply leave out a letter from a word. We will omit one. So rather than saying library, you might accidentally say library. You know what the word is, but oops. Other times we may add a sound depending on how slowly we might draw out a word. So if you were to say the word that I have after additions here, and if you were to say it slowly rather than quickly, right? Athlete. Pretty straightforward, but in addition, we add an extra sound. So if we try to say it slowly, athlete, there's an extra between the TH and the L. And some people, athlete, they add that in there, and it makes us perk up a little bit, like, that's not how you say that word. And that's all that we're focused on rather than what the sentence was about. Transportation, so where we just move some letters around, aluminum, aluminum, or simonin is another one that happens just when there's a lot of similar kinds of sounds. Sometimes we just move them and it's not on purpose, and we get blah, 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 stumbled up in our words. Distortions is just kind of the blanket statement for there was something you said there, but I don't know what it was. That just I'm straining to hear the words that they were not clear. It didn't feel like you left out letters. There wasn't anything extra. You didn't move them. You just kind of garbled the words out as a mumbly mess. Substitutions can happen. It's not that you left a letter out per se, it's that you swapped it out for a different sound. If you ever heard someone say they're going to take a picture of you, or are they going to take a picture of you? A picture is something that contains a liquid. A picture is taking a photograph. So sometimes just putting the wrong sound in there can make us question it. And really just swallowing words. And this is something that we do when we're just sort of lazy or tired, in which we are trailing off at the end of one word, and we're not crisply beginning the next word, and they just sort of merge together, and we just sort of leave off the ends of words. So One of the things that you can do to really avoid all of these is to attempt to over enunciate every single sound. That way, you are not omitting, you are not making any additions because you're trying to crisply say them, and you will not have distortions or substitutions, and you certainly won't be swallowing the ends of words if you try to articulate them very clearly. So other things that you can work on in terms of nonverbal delivery is appearance. Now, obviously, it would be nice if you would look professional in your presentations, particularly if it is a work kind of presentation, which you're giving a speech. That almost goes without saying. But just taking that extra notch above where you think your audience is going to be makes it you look like you're more prepared. Then body language really is that faking it till you make it. Standing upright, your shoulders pulled back, your hands clasped to start with. Just shows you're in that composed, ready to go. You've done this hundreds of times before, and this is just the next speech. Eye contact is incredibly important. You can be fidgety, messed with your arms and legs and are doing their own thing. You can be all over the place in your head movement. But if you are finishing a sentence with one person and holding that eye contact, and then moving to the next person and finishing a sentence or thought before moving on to the next person and working your way around and through the room. So if you feel like there's someone that you want to hold their attention, they don't get to be done listening to until you are done having them listen to you and you have released their eye contact. You are in control of that room. Demand the control of that room. You have the power in that situation. Every audience member should be paying attention to you if you want them to, and eye contact is the perfect way to do it. They're going to be looking at your face, and so the more expressive you can be, so if you're talking about something happy, show genuine human emotion, smile from time to time. If something was concerning, you can look at that. You can take that pause. Gestures, obviously there's a lot we could do in talking about gestures, but one of the things that I like to emphasize is if you try to do this right now, is clasp your hands like you're holding two cups. So if you actually have cups, go ahead and grab them and then set them down and keep your hands in that position. If not, what you should be left with is two C's. Now, if you hold your fingers like that cup is heavy and you kind of flex your fingers, and straighten them to where they're slightly curved, but mostly straight. And you have sort of a sloppy L on both sides. And you have your fingers flexed. Now, if you think about your gesturing with those, start putting them forward as though you're moving imaginary blocks around. So you're pushing things together when things come together. And you can reach in and you can separate them. And you can bring things up and you can push them down. And as an audience is looking at that, your hands look strong. You look in control. You are demanding your words. And the other thing that it does is when you have that emphasis in the strong hands, your gestures tend to be strong. It's hard to do a loose arm gesture with a strong, firm, gripped hand. And when you gesture with that, your voice tends to match that just naturally because you're putting that extra effort into it. And as I mentioned already, just your posture, just be upright. Be comfortable, but be upright instead of slouching over. It has not only the appearance of being prepared and interested in what you're saying, but also there's a physical component of limiting your airflow into your lungs and making it harder for you to deliver your speech and making yourself feel like you're more out of breath. There's a lot you could deal with voice, but I want to emphasize just a couple of pieces, and that is with volume. There's a right level of volume and then a wrong level of volume. You want to be loud enough as though the last person in your audience, the furthest person away, could hear you very clearly. That is who you are talking to. Whoever unfortunately decided to be closer to you and you're in a large room, well, they hopefully don't have a problem with you being extra loud because you have to reach every person in that room. You're not just talking to the person who's in the front row. You want to pace yourself, and so by that I mean you need to sometimes slow down, and sometimes you can go a little faster. So if what you're saying isn't that particularly important, you just have to get out the content, you can go a little bit faster. But if you need to slow down because what you are saying is just so incredibly important that you have to slow things down. people pay attention to that slowdown. Pitch and inflection. You have to change the tonality of your voice. You can't stay monotone. You have to go up when things are exciting. You have to go down. And you have to change up your sentences so they don't always sound like questions, because that's not very interesting to listen to, and it makes it kind of confusing for the audience. But you don't want to end everything in a down, because then it feels like a bummer. And it just feels like you're saying another thing, and no one cares what you're saying anymore. And so, as I said, with enunciation is something that's very important to avoid those articulatory mistakes. And so articulation is saying the sounds properly. The pronunciation is saying the word properly. So enunciation is the combination of them. I could say the word properly, but not articulate all of the sounds. I could articulate clearly, but not pronounce the word correctly. So where you put the emphasis makes a big difference. And so here is an example. So every time I have the word bolded and underlined, if you put the emphasis on that word, it drastically changes the meaning of that word. He didn't say he ate his dog. Someone said it, but maybe not him. He didn't say he ate his dog. Right? He didn't deny it either. He didn't say he ate his dog. Right? He signaled something to make us think that he ate his dog. Maybe he didn't say it, but there were some signs. He didn't say he ate his dog. He said someone did. Maybe it wasn't him. He didn't say he ate his dog. He did something to the poor animal. You don't know what it was. Maybe he didn't eat it. He didn't say he ate his dog. Well, he ate someone's dog. Maybe it wasn't his. And he didn't say he ate his dog. He ate some animal. I don't know what or why, but it wasn't a dog, right? So where you put the emphasis and where you draw attention in your sentence is going to change the meaning drastically. So if you think about pitch and volume, if you're reading something like this, there's a lot on the screen and it's not a very interesting paragraph. And what you have to be able to do with this is you have to change your pitch and match with the content. And so you've never read this paragraph before. What I want you to do is to be able to pause the video and try to read the paragraph out loud. Assuming you did that and didn't just keep going. What you may have noticed is that some of the sentences were a little longer, some of them were shorter, there's a list in there, there's a lot of punctuation. And one of the things that you want to be able to do is try to change your pitch at the punctuation. So go up and go down at punctuation. And so commas usually are associated with an upward pitch, that you go up, and it is a way to signal to the audience that there is more to come. Whereas when you finish in the downward inflection, it signals that this thought is over. But they never landed in Brazil. Taken together on the ship, these three decided to return to the United States and try their fortunes in the unsettled country of South Florida. So in that sentence, I said talking together on the ship, there's more to come, I finished the sentence in South Florida. And that is something you can always work into your speech. It adds the markers of when you would have an upward and downward pitch. Projection is very important, and seeing a lot of the videos over the years, most people have the camera either too close or too far, so the volume is really loud, or it's not loud enough. So you may be loud enough for your audience, but sometimes it's hard to hear you on the recording. So having breath support when you're projecting, trying to project from down below rather than just in your throat. So we naturally do this, but when we want to try to be louder, we often try to push it up and we get a little more nasally. So try to push as though you're projecting the words out. Have an open mouth. That will allow the sounds to come out a lot more easily. And one of the things that you can do is it really comes down to the strength in your jaw muscles. So pick up a random page from a textbook or newspaper or magazine and try to read it as fast as you can out loud. And what you'll notice is that after a couple of seconds, your mouth is, you can't even make words anymore. You're stumbling over them because your eyes and your mouth aren't aligned. When something you can try instead is to try to read it as over exaggerated as you can, as though you're reading a story to an excited 2-year-old. And what you'll find is that after about 30 seconds, your face is tired because you are using all of those facial muscles to sound so excited about everything that you're reading, because you're using those jaw muscles and your facial muscles to express and open your mouth and enunciate every single sound in ways that we typically don't do in everyday conversation. And so if you want to project clearly, you need to have that development. And so something you want to work on is to think about where you are projecting to. So if you hold your hand in front of your face and read the line on the screen, you probably pretty close to whispered it because you were thinking about you're talking to your hand, and why would you yell at your hand in front of your face? But if you think about the furthest wall from where you are sitting and try to say the line out loud, you're going to be a lot louder. So again, it's thinking about where is the furthest point that I want to be speaking to, and I want to be heard in that location. Everything from here to that furthest point is going to hear what I have to say.